Hey everybody, welcome to the next episode of Nerding Out. This is Spelljammer 2.0 because of our audio issues, but thank you so much, Master Allen, for coming back with us, even though we had some of those glitches. I'm happy that you were able to make this with us again.
That's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it.
So we're going to go over a little bit of announcements here for the first part of it, and then we'll get straight into the Spelljammer stuff. First off, so we're getting very close to October, so we are going to have like a whole week full of spooky games and talking about the best ones to play if you're wanting to scare yourself, things like that. We are also going to be starting a cooking show, which is going to have, you've all already voted on your books, so the first one is going to be Bob's Burgers, Final Fantasy, and Destiny. So those three books we're going to be working out of, and we're going to be showing those off to you. We're also going to be doing a lot of skits. One of the things that we're going to be doing is Forever DM. So for those of you who are constantly DMing and never get to actually play, you'll understand, and hopefully you'll enjoy our content. But otherwise, we're going to hop right on into the Spelljammer episode here. First off, though, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, we have known each other now. We did this math for the original episode. It's been like 10 years. Mm-hmm. It is in the vicinity of 10 years, and there was a ill-fated 4th edition D&D game that we were supposed to play in together via a mutual friend, Gary.
Yep.
Who I think you're going to interview at some point here in the near future as well. Mm-hmm. But so, folks at home, this 4th edition campaign, we didn't technically finish session 0. Like, we never got to play session 1. And to this day, I still regret not getting to do that character because I thought it was going to be a lot of fun. And has a line that I reference frequently when setting up new games with people, where there was another player who said, "Are there flying sharks in this world?" To which the DM responded, "There are now. Where are we going to put them?" And it was marvelous. And we have been Facebook friends since then, but this is, I think, like the third time we have seen each other's faces since that doomed session 0. But so you guys set out a call for people to talk about Spelljammer on your podcast, and I really quickly responded because I haven't gotten to look at a whole lot of it yet, so it was going to be a nice excuse to do that. And I am the face and customer service department and logistics and janitor of Level Up Sabers, which is the only lightsaber guaranteed better than a stick. And so if you often find yourself in need of a lightsaber better than a stick, I'm your guy. But Spelljammer was a really exciting opportunity for people in the sort of the sci-fi space, because 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons is so popular and so well recognized, that a way to take 5th edition into sci-fi spaces is something that I'm hyped about. I get a little bit more trepidation now than the first time we talked, just based on some Wizards of the Coast stuff. But we're going to dive into that here in a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so one thing I didn't mention the first time that we tried to do this was I still remember to this day when we went to Denny's and had like the big session of like drawing out the map and everything like that. Like that was, I'd never done that with a D&D group before, because I was still fairly new to the game, and like that had me super excited to start playing it and everything. And then when it fell apart, I was a little, to say the least, disheartened about it, but it looked like it was going to be such a cool one. But it didn't happen, and like I said the first time around, that just seems to be like I was going to play the Elven Ranger in that one, and she has never seen the light of day. She ruins every single campaign that she tries to get into, so I've just kind of quit doing that.
And if you're going to be forever DM, then you just like sneak it in as an NPC and see if you get to play it vicariously that way. Mm-hmm. And if as an NPC it starts to curse games, then you learn something, and maybe shelve that character.
Yeah.
For a very rowdy group, maybe.
For a very rowdy group. It's like, you all keep killing NPCs, so guess what you get? You get the cursed ranger.
Could be that could be your eject button. If you have a party that you're just tired of them, it's like, nope, that's it. It's time to blow.
Yep.
She's gonna be
get the ranger.
Sylvanas.
Buster off, roll her out.
Yeah, so since then, though, you know, I've been pretty much DMing and everything, and that's kind of why we started this. I did have a friend that was telling me some stories about his group, saying you should do something on this for your DM. He's got a guy that constantly is DMing for his groups, and he says, you know what? I'm going to take all the player characters that I wanted to do, and I'm just going to put them in my campaigns. I'm not going to nerf my rolls. They get better like stats because they're enemies and everything. So you all are getting the buffed version of the characters that I've always wanted to play, and it's your fault.
Yeah, because
so
they also
let me
get
play.
like pack tactics and stuff, right? Yeah.
It's like, so either let me play or you get this.
Drastic times. That is something that players do not always appreciate. And it just, you know, it's sometimes that's what you have to do.
Yep, absolutely. So, getting into the Spelljammers content and everything, there were 3 books actually in this box set that they came up with. So you get an adventure book, which is called The Light of Xerxes. You get a monster book. It has a little bit more into it than just monsters, but it's pretty much like all of the monsters of the New World and everything, which is called Boo's Astral Menagerie. And don't let it fool you, the character Boo is actually the gerbil, not the guy in the front. And then the Astral Adventures Guide has all of the player characters that you're able to do now, because there's a bunch of new different races that you can do, a couple of new backgrounds, and then ships. Lots and lots of ships. And I know one of the things that we talked about on that episode that we attempted was combat for ships. We went for a good half an hour, if not longer, on how that can happen, and I actually ran a one-shot for a couple that I'm starting to play with. We're doing the 1D&D playtest with this group so that we can like tell everybody what we see and what the problems are or what the great things are. While I was looking for a one-shot, there are tons and tons of people on the DM's Guild who have actually perfected like battles when it comes to like ships, when it comes to like dragons and stuff like that. So I mean, like, they've play tested this a ton to get it perfect.
Well, and there's also like, these are problems that existed in D&D before Spelljammer. Like, it's hard to take 5th edition and do vehicle combat because of the math. Like, you have like a wizard above level 10 can do so much damage in a turn, the tanks become meaningless.
Yeah.
And so, like, unless you're doing like an intentionally like a low magic campaign or other things, like vehicles become really, really difficult to use because of the meta of the game, unless they just have a ludicrous number of hit points. And if the ships have a ludicrous number of hit points, then ship weaponry has to do a ton of damage to make it so that ship combat can happen. And then if ship combat, if ship weaponry can do a ton of damage, then why would you attack a dragon without your ship? And this is the problem that D&D has always had. And sometimes they have chosen to nerf vehicles, and sometimes they have chosen to like make load times on siege weaponry really, really high so that you couldn't lean on it for, you know, things like fighting giant monsters. And
spend 5 days trying to break it down a wall.
Yeah.
Well, I've always thought that ammo is another one that would be useful, having ammo management. I don't know if that's something they already had in the kind of play-tested versions, but like, because I mean, that way there's a limit to what you can do, because yeah, like, you could shoot at a dragon, but you're not going to hit that dragon most likely for multiple reasons, because it's moving usually, especially if it sees a ship, sees a big, you know, cannon shooting at it, it's probably not going to sit there and wait for it to get shot. So you're not going to hit a moving
This isn't
dragon.
Final Fantasy. You don't take turns.
Yeah. You're not gonna hit a moving dragon with the cannon unless you're really lucky, and so the chances of hitting would be too high.
Yeah, and you can do things like scarcity is one of the tools in the DM's bag of tricks, right? Like, that's one of the things that you can pull out, is make it harder for your players to get certain scarce materials. No, like, you can make diamonds harder to acquire so that death is a more a scarier consequence. You can make other types of materials. Like you can make it so that a spell is harder to cast because of scarcity. And you could do the same thing with vehicle weaponry. You could do the same thing with like allowing firearms into your game, because there are some DMs that don't want firearms in their game because of flavor. It can, like, somebody that wants to do like more of a Lord of the Rings style high fantasy kind of thing, they may not want gunpowder. Other DMs are not comfortable having firearms in their game because the amount of potential damage at ranged is really high, and it can make a ranged non-magical character more dangerous across 3 rounds than a spellcaster. And that's something that if it's more survivable and other stuff, that's something the DMs may not want to sign up for exactly. So so ammo is a way to do scarcity. Recharge times, which is basically the same thing, or
misfires for weapons and stuff like that. And that would even work for cannons and stuff. But I've always kind of going a little bit back to the magic, because wizards are just annoying to deal with, like how their potential damage. I don't know how there would be a better way to do this, because this is a very big core rule for at least 5th edition. I don't know all the previous editions, but if you cast a spell, you are going to do damage unless you get counterspelled or a few other very small scenarios. Like they may make a saving throw, but fireball hits, we're going to take damage. And so I don't know a good way to kind of like, I guess there's uncanny dodge but you're still going to like get hit sometimes depending on how big the area is and all that. But it's like, what ways could you balance out something like that? Because I think the guns and stuff, I think it's somewhat comprehensible to manage that, but spells can be broken so much, because if you just nerf them to where they could do like a couple spells a day, what else are they going to do after that? They're too weak at that point.
Into being a caster at that point.
Yeah.
If you can't do cool stuff, it's really one of my arguments against monks is that monks don't get enough key points fast enough. Yeah, like all the cool stuff you can do runs off of that engine. And so because you're so like multi-ability dependent, and like on top of that, like the pool that you have to access, like that resource is such a scarce resource. It's really hard to just like go and be a Ninja Turtle, or go and be an airbender or whatever. And like the whole point of playing D&D is that you're trying to, especially at a certain point, be the main character of the TV show you grew up watching religiously as a 7-year-old.
Yeah.
And so like if your resource pool doesn't allow you to do that, then it's just like, well, this is dumb. Oh, but it's balanced. I appreciate that it's balanced. I feel not enough like a badass, and that makes this boring.
I really think that kind of leaning into World of Warcraft knowledge, because I think we all know a decent amount about it. The way rogues work in World of Warcraft, where you have kind of like the combo points. You have an energy kind of thing where you do gain energy. That would be essentially like the key points. I wish they had more of like a combo system, to where like if you did this ability, or in this case a cantrip or something like that, and for a monk, you would have to use your key points for higher combos and combo points. But it would always give at least monks some base move sets. Like you can combo these 3 abilities or moves, fighting moves, anytime, because they're going to be energyless. But they're not going to do a ton of damage. Maybe a little bit more. Maybe they have a small effect. Maybe that enemy can't take a bonus turn, or just something instead of a stun. It's just like a really soft kind of CC crowd control. But I would think combo points would be really cool.
One of the things that 5th edition intentionally doesn't. 5th edition doesn't have certain types of synergy mechanic that other editions of D&D have. It's a by design, because it makes it so that if you are an inexperienced player, it's much harder to make choices that are going to make your character unplayably awful. And in previous editions of Dungeons and Dragons, 3.5, which evolved into Pathfinder, 4th edition, like in the types of choices that you had, it was very, very possible to make a character that was so far below sort of the regular power curve, that the character was unplayable. You know, to the extent that like it made the DM's job really, really difficult to design an encounter around challenging the party, but not turning your character into an anchor, you know, just like a millstone around the party's neck. Because the price of being able to synergize and combo your abilities with another player's abilities, like that kind of thing, the price of that is, if you build the game to allow that, then you have to create challenge assuming it's going to happen.
Yep.
So
and then if the players don't play it right, you got problems.
Yeah. Or they choose not to, because I mean, there's not a reason that you have to. But from a math design standpoint, if it is possible for, like in 4th edition, one of the things that made it really, really interesting was that you could attack really frequently when it was not your turn. And they had a bunch of classes that would just be like, oh, well, on my action, the barbarian's going to punch him in the face really hard because the barbarian punches harder than me, so we're just going to do that. So then you could build a party that was just one barbarian with a giant weapon that hit like a dump truck wrapped with wrecking balls, and then the rest of the party wielded the barbarian as their primary weapon. And the parties that did some version of that were absolute wood chippers in combat. Like they would just they would just turn things into pulp. But if you didn't operate that way and your DM constructed encounters as though that was the kind of altercation you were going to be in and stuff like that, you'd get herb stomped. You just wouldn't do enough damage to eliminate bad guy and all that kind of stuff. And 5th edition like simplifies that part, where like your margin for error is way, way different. Now for me, like the most fun I have in the game is doing silly voices and weird teamwork combo.
Yes.
Those are
Scooby and Shaggy from their previous groups.
Yes.
Yep.
We have a couple of guys, like we've had the same group of people for about 3 years now playing, and it doesn't matter what campaign we're doing, what characters they've played, they are always together, and we call them the Scooby and Shaggy group because they constantly do stupid but always works things. So it's amazing to see what they come up with without even talking to each other.
Yeah,
and it's tough to do it in 5e. There's pathways.
Mhm.
There's nothing that is like all that like substantially different, right? You know, like it's because I can't, like there's a couple of things if you build feat wise, like if you have 3 people in the party with a weapon with reach and the polearm sentinel stack, then you just make the DM's life misery, because like something will go to move and then you'll be like, oh wait, did it say pretty please? No, it did not say pretty please. He entered a square that I threatened. Yes, that is true. He entered a square that you threatened. I'm going to attack him. You hit. Oh, well, I'm going to do this moderate amount of damage, and his speed is now 0. Oh, but I'm going to use a superiority die, and I'm going to move him. So now he's got to make a DC 14 save, and if he fails, I'm going to move him over here. Fails. Oh, I'm going to move him over there. And then the other person goes, wait, he just entered a square that I threatened, didn't he, Mr. DM?
Ping pong.
And so you can just, yeah, like I turn your party into this triangle-shaped pinball machine of screw you, you did not say pretty please. But then if you're going to do that, then you're giving up a lot of other things because you've got 3 people that built their character to be really specialized in that. You know, and so then, and you know, yeah, that's. Do you want to fight a lot of archers? That's how you fight a lot of archers. Oh, they're up on a cliff. They can see you. You can't stab them.
Sorry about that, guys. Now, I know that there's actually a few things, and I believe we're going to have Gary on the episode where we're going to talk about the new stuff that they had on the 1D&D playtest, because they said that it's going to come out like monthly on that. But I know one of the things on there we had just found out, because like I said, we're playing Tolus, which I believe was a 2nd edition game, and someone actually changed it all for a 5th edition. So, yeah, and I mean, they have a website and everything where it shows like the entire city and like all the little shops and everything like that. So it's like very well put together for someone that wants to try and run it for 5e. But we're going to try and do the vehicle battles and stuff in that and test that out. But we're also doing that 1D&D playtest for that. Yeah.
Okay.
So we had our first session, session 0, where everyone was trying to make their characters and going through and stuff, and they're actually doing a lot of changes to where you're not so like one person can't be so incredibly like powerful. Like I believe one of the things was now that there's no like critical hit anymore.
Yeah.
So you can like roll your 20, but unfortunately you're not going to get that critical hit. But it also goes away for critical misses as well. So like, you know, it's not going to be like the end of the world, but we're finding a few things in there that are kind of like one of those things where it kind of changes the game drastically in certain situations. So it'll be fun to see like how that goes and things like that, where you're able to build things, but everyone's basically on the same playing field no matter what you do. So one person can't like take over and the other people just kind of sit there.
So
Good job.
yeah, go.
Rah,
You got a
rah,
barbarian.
I know I'm not a bard, but can I just give him like inspiration because I can't do anything else?
But we are going to be playtesting some of those that unfortunately they were a purchasable thing, so you couldn't just like download them. But I did go ahead and purchase them because once we had talked about that, I was like, okay, someone else has done all the work. I want to see how this works. So
Well, and I mean, it's you guys are doing a podcast. It's content. Like it would be irresponsible there to be modules out there that people pay for that you don't have an opinion on to let them know whether or not it's worth their money. Like that.
I mean, that's true.
So
Be being a good steward of your audience at that point.
That's
true.
And so we've got two people that love to try and break the game. They've been playing since like first edition, so they know all the little things here and there. They're trying to learn 5th edition, which is why we've chosen to do it this way. But like they know how to break a game. Like one of them has played a bugbear before, and it's like if you get within 10 feet of a bugbear, he's like, "No, you don't." It's like, "No, I don't." Okay, like go ahead and do your damage.
It is incredibly hard to get reach in 5th edition
Mhm.
and do high damage.
Yeah.
Like the game forces you to choose between medium damage, longer reach, or higher damage, shorter reach, because it's and some of it is because of the designs of the feats and things like that. I love getting to build the Sentinel polearm stack. Like it is just
I didn't get to play too long. I probably was like level 5 or 6,
Something like that.
but I did do a fighter with a shield spear kind of setup, and I just love that idea of that play style. It doesn't do very much, of course, in D&D, but especially early. But
I don't understand why the one-handed spear does less damage than a longsword.
I mean, technically, the spear was the most deadly weapon in all history.
It might be faster, but it doesn't have as big of a blade.
It was the most used by far.
But it also it technically reaches farther, but the game doesn't care.
Yeah.
So like that was one of the reasons. It's also like that type of deep penetrative damage. So then you're doing organ damage rather than, you know, it's like they're less expensive to make, and they're easier to take care of when you're in theater and other things. Like there's
You could
all
literally
kinds
make
of
it out
reasons
of
why.
just wood. You didn't even have to have metal back then.
Like there's all kinds of reasons that the spear was the preferred weapon of foot soldiers for longer than any other loadout. Like the shield spear loadout is the most common, and it's like across cultures. Like
I
you know,
learned,
and
hey,
so
pointy stick is good.
versus the sword and board, which like D&D really clearly favors from a feat support standpoint and other meta standpoint, like favors the sword and board over the spear and shield.
Looks cool.
And I'm not gonna lie, kind of annoyed. Actually did a TikTok video talking about why we don't see more spear combat. And it comes down basically to 3 things. If you're gonna do spear combat in movies, your principals, like your stunt people, have to be really good.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how you make the prop weapon; it's still really dangerous. Whereas like the way that you construct sword combat, because you get more big swings instead of pokes, it's a lot easier to do safely if you have people that aren't as experienced. And then the other reason is fitting people in frame. So if next time you're watching, whether it's Star Wars and it's a lightsaber fight or something else, one of the things that you'll notice is there's a lot of sequences where weapons hit, and the characters sort of lean into each other, and that's when there's like a tight shot. It is really, really difficult to fit two weapons and two faces into frame at the same time and have the audience be able to clearly see the expression on either of the faces. And that is why you will always see reverse grip sword stuff used in movies and TV shows and things like that, because it makes it so that you can make everything happen closer. Because it takes away your reach, and that's the reason why in HEMA basically nobody duels reverse grip, because like it's the meta punishes it so heavily. But you are always going to see it in stage combat because of that, and that is the reason that we see very, very few like spear epic fights. There are some great ones, but there aren't as many of them as there are sword fights, and it's because like the things that you need to have lined up in order to have a good spear fight are just a lot harder to get. Jet Li's got one with Donnie Yen in Hero. Jet Li does a really good one in actually Jet Li's got several, but like when you start thinking about like Western action movies, there's like Troy. That's kind of it.
Yeah.
there's just not a lot of them. I mean, 300, but
Yeah.
It really wasn't a lot of individual spear combat. It was just lines of men with spears, which is what happened.
Yeah, it was very cool.
So you can't say that it's not cool.
No.
No.
I don't watch an action movie for historical accuracy. I don't watch a martial arts movie for historical accuracy. That's not how a martial arts fight goes. I just want it to look badass. I want to watch Jet Li do something that I can't do. That's why I'm here.
Yeah.
I want to watch Jackie Chan improvise a rope dart out of a horseshoe and a length of like that's why I'm here. So I can be like, how did they do that?
Yeah, I feel like it's very hard for you to watch like those types of action movies because of what you do for a living.
It's when I was younger, I was like super gatekeepy about that kind of stuff, and it's but especially now, like appreciating how much talent it takes to structure big set piece fight scenes and things like that. Like you've got to have really, really good people to do that safely, and so it's like I can just watch it and appreciate the skill.
Yeah.
Rather than like, oh, this isn't real. It's like, well, no shit.
Like,
It lasted longer than 6 seconds. It's not real. That's how that goes. If it only lasted 6 seconds, this would be a really boring movie. Like,
Yeah, Ip Man with Donnie Yen, of course, was one of my favorites back in the day.
and it was
Not 100%. First one wasn't too bad, but it's realistically not real.
it's
But
a motion
that was
movie.
the
That's
point.
okay. That's what they're for.
I loved it.
It's great.
Yeah. So I think that the whole part of Spelljammer and everything, like doing this for the battles, like I know we talked about last time, getting back to that and everything, like I feel like it's going to be like more so up to like the DM to help with that stuff too, because like we said with like Curse of Strahd, when they bring all of this together into like the contents that's already out there, like you can't take a spaceship like that's been out there and just like crash it into Strahd's castle and just be like, it's a ship, we can do it, it's whatever. But
Well, it's just like that would really be a restriction from the DM saying like you're not bringing an airship into this combat, like this campaign. That doesn't make sense.
Or as a DM, you figure out how to yes and it, because then it's just like, oh, okay. And so like you crash the airship into the castle, and then Strahd strolls out, because Strahd doesn't do anything halfway, right? Like that's he's gonna be in like pirate garb with a rapier, and a cutlass between his teeth.
so pirates it is, eh?
Or something, and then he indicates this boneyard of ship parts, and you realize it's not the first time this is.
So, do you really think that you all were different?
Or just humor them like they have to have the ships. Like, okay, fine. It gets there. Well, technology and science is different in this realm, and it doesn't float anymore. So it just
Goes into the ground.
Yeah, like,
I mean, just yeah.
and it gets you back to scarcity, right? Because like maybe your ship has ammo. There is not a way to get the materials you need to make more ammo. So what you come in with is what you have for the entire campaign.
Yeah.
So if you want to point a cannon at Strahd, let's figure out how to make that happen, because it's going to be an awesome thing to play, right? But that means that it's up to me as the DM to throw enough stuff at you that you keep thinking, sure would be nice if we had some grenades right about now, or something that it's like, all right, do I want to use this limited resource or do I want to save it for the boss? And
Right.
because that's what you're doing as a DM anyway, putting the players into positions where they have to decide how they're going to use their resources, how they're going to use their abilities. That's all that's all that the adventuring day with like the X number of short rests and long rests and blah blah blah. That's all that is.
Yeah.
Like, is figuring out how to force your players to decide whether or not they want to blow a long rest ability on this fight.
Right.
Yeah.
That's true.
And
yeah.
I feel like this, though, brings up the topic of this is all good and well if you have the energy and capacity and time as a DM to create this and make sure this works well. Because there are some times you're going to run a game that you're going to be running by the seat of your pants because you've been working all week and you're trying to get things together. Yeah, I mean, there's going to be stuff
That's why
that makes
every
it
game
work.
I have ever run, I just run by the seat of my pants because like my players aren't like your players are never gonna do what they say they're gonna do. Not really. Week to week, it's gonna and that's not a players being jerks. That's a like. No, that's a consequence of having a group of people live storytelling and problem solving around a table. So as a DM, like you've either got to be willing to railroad people. If you don't want to do that, then it's just like, all right, what are we doing today, guys? We're gonna burn Stroud's castle down. Okay, cool. Let's do it.
So,
We're gonna rain metal and then cast heat metal. All right, let's see how this goes. Okay, all right, I'm in. That's fine. Like, where are you going to get the metal?
So
and it's also like as a DM, functionally, your job is to keep the story progressing. So it's if the players want to do something, you figure out how to turn it into a role so that it can determine the outcome. And then sometimes it's up to you to tell them what went wrong so that they didn't get the result that they wanted. And other times, you can put it on them and you can say, well, okay, so it didn't work. Why didn't it work? What'd you do wrong? And so then you put it on them to describe what it was their character forgot or mistook or whatever. And then it's also not all on you because it's their story too.
Yeah. And I think that's a very important part about like in D&D in general is like, yeah, as a DM, you are the one that's telling the story, but these people have taken their heart and soul and put it into their characters and they want to see something cool with this character that they have created. So
they want to get to have their time to shine. They want to get to, revel in the teamwork, and like they simultaneously want everything to be by the skin of their teeth, and everything to be a walk in the park.
Right.
You have to balance it.
Cool. Yeah.
Like you have to balance the walk in the park fights with the skin of your teeth fights, because if every fight is skin of your teeth, then you start to dread combat, and that's not how D&D was built.
Right.
D&D was not built to make you dread combat. It's not. It's a combat simulator with some other stuff like stuck on it. But it's also like if every single fight is just like that stops being fun too. Like that's you're playing the game on story mode, which I'm not going to shame anybody for playing the game on story mode, but there are a lot of folks that like it's like you do it, you consume the story, and then it's just like it's like it doesn't you don't connect with it the same way because there wasn't challenge. And so
I think
the
that
DM, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, kind of finishing a thought earlier was this, I think, is going to be more difficult for, the way that I don't think Spelljammer blends that well with, of course, current D&D versus Spelljammer. I mean, there's plenty of stuff you can pull into the campaign, no problem.
But it's with Eberron pretty well. Like there's other stuff, but like, you know, like the steampunkier settings, it fits fine because it's kind of steampunk in space.
Yeah.
Like, from a flavor standpoint. Keep going. I stepped on you.
No, you're good. I think it's still just in general going to be more difficult for DMs. That's just as they add more content. The more content, the more stuff you have to remember that there's another broken character that can counter this scenario, so you have to think of that ahead of time, or just your encounter gets broken. And I think just the more stuff they add, the more difficult it will be. And I think that 5e was I think you had mentioned one of the more approachable versions of Dungeons & Dragons so far, because it simplified the rule set, and it just made it like where you can't make bad characters as easily, you know, as you're leveling up. So
I don't know. My Dragonborn that I tried to make healer was pretty useless the whole
because you
time
got beaten to submission with roleplay on the other end saying you sucked constantly.
And the thing for me is, and so there are going to be a lot of DMs in general that are intimidated by Spelljammer because it is so very different. Because there are a lot of people that D&D for them is Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Like, and it's that kind of flavor and it's that kind of world.
Yeah.
I have always liked D&D on the steampunkier side of that kind of flavor. So Spelljammer really isn't that big of a leap for me. There are some people that Eberron is too big of a leap for them. There are some DMs that don't want artificers at their table because they don't want the idea of like
Modernization.
You know, they don't want the idea of gears.
Yeah.
In Lord of the Rings. And that's something that, like, if you're upfront about it as a DM at character creation, it's like, hey guys, look, this is the setting I like to be in, so this is what's okay, this is what isn't, things like that. Like, then you can be clear about the type of game you like to run. Your players can be clear about what is going to be okay, what is not going to be okay. And then everybody can have a good time. If you've got a table full of players that all want to play steampunk and you are a DM that absolutely does not, you're not a good fit. So then either they need to find another DM or you got to figure out how to bend. And neither one of I can't tell you what the right thing is there.
Yeah.
See, I think that as a DM, since I've not even done it myself, but just preliminary, like thinking about it, if it's a based off of the books kind of story, realistically you should be able to bend pretty well around what your players are going to want. But if it is a homebrew or you're testing something out, as long as you let the players know up front, say, hey, this is a test realm, public test realm type of thing. I want to try like just a generic group here if we can. That's understandable. But a lot of times what I've seen is DMs like to put a lot of love and care into their story. That's the whole point of why if you do enjoy DMing, is you create the story around the characters and the characters bend that story around them. And they love it so much and care for it so much that they get so butthurt when things go wrong or they break it. So
I mean,
that's just what happens.
I feel that, but like also as a DM who's also running her own homebrew campaign, we have a few of those episodes up on our channel here, but like those characters I have been creating since I was in high school, so we're talking like 2004. So for me personally, I know this group of people that we're playing with right now, they're going to demolish my world. They're going to destroy everything that I love and hold dear. And like as a DM, you have to know like that is how the player does, and
you gotta
you've either got to be okay with it or not. And if you're not okay with it, then
you should probably rethink. Yeah, I mean, I know that. Go ahead.
Well, and so like as a DM, and basically every DM has to learn this lesson at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Is the like if your players feel like their characters are in choose your own adventure book that you are writing, it's less fun for them than if it's like multiple novels in a series that are being simultaneously written from the perspective of like 6 different people. If you think about like the books that we grew up on when we were kids, like the independent reader things, where there'd be a series and it's like there's a cluster of characters and one book is from one perspective and then the next book has like a little bit of the events of that book, but it's from a different character's perspective and then some of their stuff, and that's how that's how, as a DM, you can best serve your players. That's a tough thing to figure out how to do, and it's a tough balance because at a certain point you also have to prepare in some kind of way, because if you're not prepared at all, then they can't do anything. And if you are so prepared that they don't actually have choices, and like that's the problem too. And so like figuring it out, and then also just like going in knowing it's like, all right, I'm gonna screw it up, here we go.
Yep.
Like, I'm gonna get this wrong, and somebody's gonna get mad, and then we're gonna figure it out.
Yeah. So, I tried to balance that in mind to where it's like I made the map and I let them know like what sections were kind of like this area of the real world. So it's like you pick a place where you want to be, if any, in this. If you don't want to be from this world, you can be from a different continent or whatever. But if you do choose that, you let me know what you want for your character and how you want your character to be, and I will make that happen in this world. Like, for instance, we have Patrick, who is a sword slashing pirate tiefling, and like she came from a noble home and got thrown out as a baby and like went out to be with the pirates. And I was like, you tell me what you want. And he was like, I want to be under like the king pirate and be like, I've already learned everything from you, now it's time for me to go off and do my own thing. I was like, all right, I will make a like a pirate hub, and we will make it to where like only you know the location of where to find it, because you are like the daughter that the pirate king never had.
Practically,
you are the possessor of this knowledge that is otherwise
just non-existent.
Which means that there are problems that are going to come after your party because there are people that are coming for you.
Yeah, exactly.
It's already happened.
Yeah.
And that becomes the other thing. Like, as a DM, Spelljammer just gives you a new way to make things happen to your players. There's new races, there's new planets, there's new settings, there's all this stuff that doesn't necessarily have to take place in space, and doesn't necessarily have to take place on your world. Like, if you think about superhero origin stories, like Green Lantern exists on our world because a Green Lantern crash landed here and was dying and gave it to Hal Jordan. Like, and so like that would be an easy origin story for a warlock character. That would be an easy origin story for a bunch of things where it's like, oh no, my ship crashed, now I'm trying to get back. Oh no, his ship crashed, I'm trying to help him. Yeah. Oh, he crashed his ship, and then he actually got thrown from really far away, and he went into this pub and he asked for help, and then they introduced him to ale, and then he forgot a lot of things that happened after that. And like it's an extra. How this is gonna sound horrible and judgmental, but like, how like if you're in somebody's kitchen and they have 3 containers in their spice drawer, you're not as excited about eating with that person. But if you open up the spice drawer and it is just erupting with stuff,
yes,
like, I love spices.
So you're gonna have a better time because they've seemed to have a little bit more of a palate.
And like, you get different flavors, right? Because if the person has salt, pepper, and oregano, and that's all they have, everything tastes the same. It doesn't matter if it's chicken or pasta or whatever. But if the person's just like, no, we got some stuff from India, we got some stuff from South America, we got this.
Yeah, and I realized
like his chili, ate it, and then wept for 4 days, and then vomited.
It's like, don't know why they tried this food, but they regretted it, and now it's delicious. So. But yeah, I will say, like, that's one thing that I really like about some of these new playable characters that you can do in Spelljammer, is like they seem to have, like, I mean, not to say that the ones that are already in like the player's handbook are bad, but like you've got like the orcs, you've got humans, you've got halflings, and they have these really cool perks, but like they seem to have gone into full detail about like the history of these people and like where they came from and how they are now. Like the GIF, the space hippos, are like those very tactical and resilient race that are really into, like, they're very good with guns, and they like know their stuff, and like their swim speed's faster and all of that. They really built on this character to be like, it's not just a hippo, it is like this race of super smart, mastery of tactics people.
this is going to be a really good segue to the Hodrosi before we dive into that. They were obviously much more willing to take risks outside of what D&D has always been with this setting. Eventually Wizards of the Coast is going to get completely away from evil races. And that's something, there have been a lot of people that have been calling for that for a really long time. You know, and one of the other complaints that has existed about the races for a really long time is that there are races that are, the phrase is racially coded. And I'll give like a brief explanation on that for anybody that hasn't heard that phrase before. But racially coded and incredibly stereotypical, and not in a supportive or positive way. Like in a very restrictive, a very like limiting kind of way. And so racial coding, or sometimes it's just called coded. A character or race will be given certain features or certain aesthetic that matches a real world, like historical or cultural or whatever something. A recent example in the Wakanda Forever trailer, all the imagery around Namor, it's a whole bunch of Aztec everything, and so all of the Atlanteans are going to be Latinx or like Aztec coded. Ahsoka is a really, really popular character from Clone Wars, and people that talk about some of the lack of racial representation in Star Wars, one of the things they talk about is humans are mostly represented as white, and alien races are usually coded as other cultures from our own planet. And so like Ahsoka is coded as a person of color. Twi'leks, for whatever reason, are coded kind of French. I still have not found an interview where somebody explains why Twi'leks like have French accents. That's like a thing that's now.
So they're exotic.
Well, but like Star Wars creators are now stuck with that. Like, so like when if you're gonna do something that is centered on Twi'lek, excuse me, I've been saying Twi'lek, like, so if you're gonna do something centered on that race, then it's like, okay, they have French accents. I don't know.
They have to be French now.
Like, yeah, it's, you know, and things like that. But the Hodrosi, there have been several creators now that have taken Wizards of the Coast to task on how poorly thought out the racial coding on the Hodrosi were. And that's something that we don't have to, I don't know that we need to rehash that, because we are three non-people of color sitting around a table talking about something that a lot of people have already talked about, to the extent that Wizards of the Coast did like a big reprint.
Yep.
Yeah.
And a public apology.
Yeah.
Well, question too, is this this race also in D&D previously? It's
So
just
they
kind of like
were.
copy and pasted?
No, so I did a little bit of research on this. They were kind of introduced in the second edition, and like they have said, even like in their recent, when they've said they've redone this, that like no one really reread anything about them whenever they brought them back out, so they kind of just were like, hey, we're putting them in the Spelljammer at this point, here you go, they're back, and then didn't do the research on how they actually worded it. And then once they got a bunch of complaints, people were like, ooh, yeah, this is a little dated, we should probably change this. And so now the digital copy is fixed. That one shows the actual like new version, but if you've still got the physical copies, like anything you get from this point on, they're pulling them off of the shelves and now putting in like the newer version of them. So
and I'm kind of torn on this one, because on one hand, like Wizards spent a lot of money to act quickly after this blew up, that is something that is like, all right, that's, you know, like you reprinted digital, you are pulling physical copies and other things, that's awesome. The Wizards has a fairly established track record at this point of some pretty racially insensitive stuff. And it's really easy to like this ends up sort of being the formula, and whether it's haven't hired enough people to provide some broader voices or what the issue is, but it's number of times that we have had to talk about Wizards of the Coast in this context is like it's very hard to defend them at this point, because like number of boneheaded mistakes, like they really should have learned something by now.
Yeah. It's like you all have been around long enough to know like you should be checking this stuff before you put it out, especially when you're going to be like putting out a bunch of money for the books and everything like that, and you're spending all this money on getting things out. It's like you probably want to check that stuff before you spend all that money.
The people you bought it from in the first place had like a history of being kind of misogynist and racist, and now publicly transphobic and homophobic and other stuff too. So it's just like maybe check their work.
Yeah.
Maybe, just run the editing pen over that.
It's like even if you think that you've done it, you need to do it again, because you could have missed something, and you did. So yeah, it's very unfortunate how those like I was really hoping to look forward to all this and everything, and then this kind of like a couple of days after we had tried our first time and this all started coming out, it's like I really don't want this to fail, you know. It's like I don't want this to cloud over all of the good stuff that they're really trying to do, but it's like you do better. You know?
Well, this is just another example that they are clearly a business, and the reason why they fix it so quickly isn't anything else other than, in my opinion, just the money. And they're not just like an evil, stingy, greedy company, but they are there for money. And in this sense, they just launched a very big, very important new book, of course, Spelljammer. I think they're wanting to make sure they have a new direction to go, and this is something big for them. They're excited. They wanted this to be a nice, clean, good launch, so pretty much everything's positive. There was one small negative thing that came up, and then they immediately patched it.
It seems like they're going to have more source books for this. It really seems like this is something that they are gonna build off of, almost like a spin-off TV show, but just as sort of a proof of concept of their product isn't the world's, isn't the races, isn't any of that. Like their product is the system.
Like you said, the math.
Like that was the thing that they really focused on when they were releasing D&D 5e. Like when they released it as D&D Next or whatever, when they were in the beta, they had a lot of professional game designers that were working on it, and they had taken a very, very different approach than they had in all of the previous D&Ds. And they were really like tabletop focused and all this kind of stuff. So in a lot of ways, like the mechanics, the math that's their product. That's the thing they've invested in. And I don't mean to minimize the work of all their story people and stuff, but I think it seems like if Spelljammer is a hit in any kind of way, which it may still yet be, it may not be, we'll see what happens, but like that opens the door for them to be like, contacting Marvel, or and creating a licensed version of their math and doing it that way. And
oh well, you said if that becomes a success, I honestly would say time will tell how much more they build off of this, but this has already become a very big success in my mind.
I mean, it seems like
because
they did.
Because of not only for just this right here where people are talking about it a lot, it's just gotten a lot of attention. It's gotten, like you guys said, a lot of copies sold, and it's something new and fresh and exciting. So I think this has absolutely succeeded, and that's probably why they've tried to cement the deal by making sure things went over smoothly, everything's no wrinkles.
Yeah,
they did, and I think they knew they wanted to keep this all positive.
Yeah. And I mean,
So
it
I think
seems like
they
they have, they had 3 books into this, and it still doesn't seem like they had, scratched the surface of what they wanted to do. They were just kind of like, hey, here's some cool information. This is a new thing that we're working on. Here's, a small adventure for you all to do real quick, just to kind of test it all out. But, we have so much ready to go. And there's there's so many different new races and stuff like that, and one of them that I want to point out is the Rhaegar, which is kind of like the space octopus.
Nice segue.
Yeah, like, well,
Nice job.
well, I mean,
No, I mean, like the when I was doing, it's like, well, most of this stuff, like all the new races and everything, you could basically say it's space this, so space starfish, space octopus, space whales, but like
Space hippos, space oozes.
yep, space monkeys, like it's
Or the space clowns.
space clowns, or the vampire pirates, or vampirates.
Yeah,
I thought that was
vampires.
kind of funny, but like one of the
Yeah,
cool
I heard
things
that.
about like I didn't see, like, they tried to put like at least one character of these like non-playable characters in the book, the adventure, so you could at least see like how they react in the world and stuff, like the little Dwar, the little penguins and stuff like that. They put one everywhere so you could at least see them, but those Rhaegar
The best thing they introduced, in my opinion, was the penguins. But keep going on the octopus.
oh my god,
like they're super cool, and I love the idea of so many things you can like play off of them. But like the Rhaegar are this race that not only like loves violence, but like they think that violence is art, and war is like the finest piece of art that you could possibly make to them. And so like whenever
It kind of fits.
Yeah.
Don't you know how angry octopuses always look?
they're super smart.
Yeah.
But like they have these like they talk to you about it, and they're just like, we don't care about whatever it is happening. We find that this like massive war out here, like what the adventure itself is like an elven, one of the new astral elves is trying to like take life force from planets to help feed his own, and they're like, we don't care. We find that the carnage that has been happening on your planet looks beautiful, and we're not going to mess up with art. And it's like, that is something incredibly different than what I'm used to in D&D, especially like in the way that they look and everything. Everything looks super cool. Like all these new character designs and stuff are just so much like, there's so much more colors. They're smoother. Like everything just looks more, I don't want to say steampunk, but like just more spacey and magical.
It's like campy and like in the best way, in my opinion. For anybody that isn't familiar with the new race of merchant space penguins with hands, and so like it's a gnome-sized penguin, and then at the end of the flipper is a hand instead of a flipper, right? This is what they look like. And so like tiny suits or like little sweaters and hats, and like, I mean, just any of the adorable ways that you could dress them up. But they believe, well, they behave as though all transactions must be done like in secret and under cover of dark. And so if you are buying stuff from them, if you are interacting with them as a merchant or trading something with them or whatever, no matter what it is, it could be cotton candy, and it will only take place in hushed
it's cotton
whispers
candy
in a dark alley. Like,
it's
it
like
could be,
under their coat.
And just like holding it, and they're being like, you want to buy this piece of bread? It's like,
Dude, it's not
stuff,
illegal
you
for
got the
bread.
money.
I very much think they look like
crate full of books for the orphanage. I got
If
the stuff,
you
you get the money.
Have you ever played Mass Effect before? Yes, they very much, the description so far has always reminded me of the Volus, the little tiny guys that had the breathers, and they weren't necessarily telepathic or like thought every deal was dark deal, but they were all businessmen style kind of characters, and they always were usually kind of on the gray to black market, so you usually would have deals that you did have to be quiet about. So
They're not like adorable, is the thing.
no,
It's like-
they were not.
That's the
it's
thing
like
about these things.
they're super adorable, and like they act as if that everything is of like the illegal sin that they cannot do, but then they're also telepathic, and if you mess with one, you mess with all of them. And I think that's my favorite part of it, because like if you wrong one of them, and
go
one of
around
the
the
things
corner,
that's
there's
like
penguins.
they worship, and it's not just one god, it is any god that has to do anything about money. Like They don't care where it's from. They don't care what planet it's from. Like, if you say, like, I worship the god of money, they're like, oh, sweet, who is this god that you speak of? And they like, cool,
Praise be that
Yeah,
god.
this is awesome. Put them on the shelf next to
Yeah. So I
Hey,
mean, like, people have said, like, well, what if I say, you know, like, oh, well, the god of coin will, you know, thank you if you were to give me this for free, and he will bless you. Like, you mess with that one penguin, and they're like, hey, that person didn't pay me, and now I'm out my money. Like, hey guys, you know, a little telepathic call to the rest of them. You need to watch out for this person right here.
Just literally puts a hand up to his ear.
It's like, guys, we got a ship here with this colors and like this
License
type.
plate L2B5.
that will be the only way that I express their telepathy from now on, as they do this.
Oh my god, it's like the meme, the guy that's at the baseball game. He's like, got the phone to his face, and he's like really
Oh,
perturbed.
yeah. It's like, but they're not even talking because they're doing it like telepathically. So you just see this little penguin with his hands just being like, it's like, what is he doing? And then you just see like the swarm of all the other Dolwar just running towards you and be like, you disappoint us. Ah! It's like, guys, we gotta go now. I have wronged the penguins. I mean, they've got like such cool different like things that are coming out with this that it's just like, I feel like they really did a lot of thought process into making this something super cool and unique. And I mean, like, even like your new playable characters and stuff like that, like one of them we haven't set on is the auto gnome, which, like, depending on who makes it, they can either like put their own thought, they have like their own free will, but it's like the person says like, hey, you know, you really want to do this in life, and it's like, I do really want to do this in life. So it can do its own thing, or it can take what you give it and just be all about that. It's like super cool. Little mechanical gnomes running around. Like, they've put a lot of heart into these new characters.
The auto gnomes could be like, you could play the auto gnomes like C-3PO. You could also play the auto gnomes like Iron Man. And that's one of the other things about this, because these races don't have the same baggage that other races have from D&D. It is very, very hard to play an orc without leaning into the stereotype of an orc.
Low intelligence, high strength. Yep.
And some of that kind of stuff. Again, it's really, really hard to break trope of some races at this point, because D&D has just like always presented them a certain way, so that it's just stuck. It's just trapped.
But on the other hand, though, it's still fun to sometimes do break out of that mold and make a character that is that kind of opposite.
One of my favorite character concepts that I've never gotten to play is Thorak. And Thorak comes from a people where the language is all tonal, so the vocabulary is very, very small. And so he kind of speaks common, but not very well. And so most of what he says is Thorak smash, and it's just based on inflection that you can tell the difference. And so upon first meeting, everybody just assumes he's a barbarian, but the character is a paladin.
That is very cool.
That aspect of like breaking tropes or playing with expectations or whatever is something that's really fun to do with D&D, that you have the power to do. One of the things that I would caution DMs to is, if you have lived a life that is mostly free of, if you haven't had to live under a lot of racism, if you have not had to live under microaggressions and some of that kind of stuff, and you got players at your table that have, if you aren't really, really intentional about how different races interact with each other and how you depict who's in charge and things like that, that is a very fast way to make your table feel very unsafe for certain people. And so, especially if you are a DM and you're just getting started, and you don't have a whole lot of experience gaming, or you don't have a whole lot of experience DMing, that's something to just be really, really mindful of, is that you make a lot of assumptions at the gaming table that other people's lives have looked like yours. So when you encounter somebody that doesn't, it's really, really easy to be offensive. And so then if you are offensive without meaning to be, if you apologize and then use the word but, the apology doesn't count.
Yeah, everything is null and void at that point.
Somebody I used to know said the truth comes after the but.
And so if somebody says, hey, look, the way you're doing this makes me really uncomfortable, you know, apologize, own it, and then figure out your path forward. Don't make excuses. Don't justify your choices. If they ask for an explanation, then it's okay to provide one. But if you say, I'm sorry, and then provide an explanation, it makes the other person feel like you're not sorry. It makes the other person feel like you didn't apologize.
Yeah. And we've run into that actually a couple of times because we have our one-shots that we do where people make their own characters. And one of the characters that someone had made up on Reddit was I think it's a very cool concept, but again, not for everybody to play or be around to play. There was a warlock that was a zombie. So like he was stuck as a zombie and his ghost was constantly like following him around. And so like, yeah, so like the ghost wants to kill his character, or like himself, because he wants to like give his
body.
You want to be able to get the body back.
Yeah, exactly. And he's like, I want my body to rest, but like I know I can't kill myself, so like he's always trying to like get that body into certain situations to where it kills itself, so that it can finally like go to whatever god he worships. And we had a person at the table when we like spread them out on the table. We just put them in folders and said, pick a random folder. Whatever you get is who you play. They got that folder and they were like, hey, I don't really feel very comfortable playing this character. I've dealt with a lot of suicidal tendencies in my life. So is it okay if I switch? And so they ended up switching off to a cleric that was more like a prior authorization, or like a pharmacist. So it's like, yeah, it's like, I'm sorry, I can't heal you unless you pay your copay. So that's going to be 5 gold. So stuff like that. And like they were way more comfortable with that than they were with.
It was going to have to constantly talk about self-harm.
Correct.
Yeah. Shock.
Yeah.
I cannot. This
Right?
is my shock face. I am filled with the shock.
I still think that it was hilarious because I always think of the Muffin song from ASDF. If you know, I think you probably would.
No, ASDF animation.
And there's all kinds of people that might have had a lot of fun playing that character.
Mhm.
A bunch of different ways, or being at a table where somebody was playing that character.
Right.
Which and again, just for new DMs out there, or people that are still kind of learning their way or whatever, the reason why you do a session 0 isn't so that people can make characters and figure out their teamwork and line up their stories. The reason why you do a session 0 is so that you find out what sorts of things are going to be like a little bit too close to home for people, so that, because like, that person that had a problem with, a character that was going to actively sort of pursue self-harm, it might have been really, really hard for that person to be at a table where there was that character
For a long period of time. Yeah.
And so like so understanding people's traumas, understanding people's triggers, can make it so that you can take care of people, because if you trust the people at the table around you, it's a lot easier to keep yourself separate from like the stuff. It's a lot easier to feel like you're the one that's in power rather than the trigger. And so then it becomes something that's easier for you to approach and more comfortable to be adjacent to. And it still may not be. But that's like, if you've got trust around the table and everybody's ready to communicate and own their bag and stuff like that, like we have a very different flavor of interview this go around, but this has been good. Our previous one was a whole lot of shenanigans and nonsense, and this has been we've had a couple of breaks to talk about heavy stuff, but I think
they're important stuff though, because I mean, like, as a DM, your job is to not only like run the game, but make sure that everybody that is at your table is having a great experience and having fun. And like, if one person, exactly, and it's like one person, if they're not having fun and they're not feeling comfortable, then they're going to dread coming every single week, and they may not be comfortable like explaining why. So like, as a DM, you've got to figure out like, what is everybody wanting to do? Like, what is everybody comfortable with? Like, I've heard plenty of people who have like played in games, and like some of them, like we had a game that someone started, did not ask the character itself, like themselves, if they could do this, but they were like, supposed to be locked in a cell, and we were supposed to try and like break them out and get them into the group. And the DM had said like, all right, well, you're strung up naked. And they were like, whoa, like I didn't sign up for that. Like I didn't say that. And it's like, lucky for us, like that didn't cause any real big problems. But like afterwards they were like, I wonder why that person chose to do it that way and make it just a little awkward for that beginning scene with all the characters, you know? Like as a DM, you're supposed to think about those things and then clear it with those characters before you start randomly doing things to them, because in the end it's not your character, it's theirs. You're just making a world for them.
And as the DM, it's your job to be the hub of the story. And so like it's the phrase that you just used, and this is how a lot of people think about DMing, and if you flip your thinking a little bit, it becomes helpful. If you as the DM are doing things to the characters and you're thinking about your role a little bit different from a better way. I'm trying to choose my words carefully now that I'm saying this. If you think about yourself as being like, you know, the deity playing dice with the universe, as compared to like you're a member of the party. You are a member of the party that has to tell the party no, but like you're a member of the party, and so the party says we want to do this, then it's your job to figure out how.
Yeah.
Like, and turn it into dice and turn it into a roll.
Right.
That becomes your job. Is it's like, okay, we're gonna fly the ship into Strahd's castle. No, this is fine. I've absolutely definitely prepared for this.
Everything's fine. It's cool.
I was ready. I was ready for this. I'm fine. We're all fine here. How are
It's
you?
like no bad things can happen. It's fine.
I'm just gonna take a restroom break and Google a bunch of stuff.
It's like I'll be back in maybe 5 minutes. I don't know. Just keep going.
Yeah, just, you know, you guys banter. It'll be fine. Talk on your way to Strahd's castle. It's gonna be great. This is gonna be brilliant.
Yeah.
But that is what DMing is facilitating the story, not doing things to the characters.
Right.
So,
So with you being like a DM and of course like me being a DM, you're wanting to be a DM here. Like with all of this spell, like of course there's too much stuff to actually go through every single thing in the Spelljammer thing. You're just gonna have to get it for yourself and take a look, because there's a lot of cool things that are starting to come out that you can use in everything. But like with this kind of like beginner like 1.0 of Spelljammer, like what is it that you're wanting to see come out of this? Like is there anything in particular that you want them to do in the future with it? Or
so it feels like an incomplete game. Like there's enough for this to exist because the other source books exist. But I got to explain this in our original interview. So there's something in entrepreneur culture that's called the MVP. And the MVP is the minimum viable product. It is the least amount of whatever could be delivered to your customer for the customer to get like something that they perceive the value and works. So Spelljammer is a minimum viable product. Ship combat is incomplete. There aren't new classes. I'm gonna have to let my pupper out here in just a moment. That is what those bells are. But that it's like there's a lot of things that are missing from it that I was more looking forward to. Like the races are cool. That was a big thing. It's like there is enough here for you to take any character class you want around any build and put them into Spelljammer and have an adventure. It is tougher right now to make a Spelljammer class.
yeah.
And do a Spelljammer adventure. And that piece that doesn't exactly exist yet, that's something that I'm the most excited about, because classes are more mechanical in nature. A lot of what we have from the existing source books is like story level stuff.
Right.
And that's interesting and it's neat and it's different, and it'll really help players, especially players that are newer, really open up their imagination on what they could do with their character. I could be a space hippo. I don't want to be a space hippo. I want to be a subterranean rhino. Like
Yeah.
It's like that's really like I hope that they do have a lot of stuff that they plan on coming out with this, because like you said, it does feel kind of like an incomplete thing. But yeah, it's like fingers crossed that like they have a lot more coming out. Hopefully it really does well enough for them to just be like, hey, there's Pathfinder, there was Starfinder, here's our answer to Starfinder, and we're gonna do so much more with this. I really hope it does well. I really hope that they put out more like adventures specifically in the Spelljammer universe, so we can see a little bit more of this and see a lot more of the penguins. I would really like to see that. So, but thank you so much for being on the show for the second time. That like we made sure that the audio worked every time this time, guys. So I promise you that this one is going to be like up. You're not going to hear this until the end, but it's up. It's going to be running. But we'll definitely have to have you on for another time to get some information. You've got so much knowledge that for D&D and just like life in general.
For a nice way of saying that I've been a nerd for a long time, but thank you for thank you for euphemizing.
I think all three of us have been nerds like for a very long time, so it's just we all have our own brand of what we're into, and that makes us well-rounded. So but thank you so much for being on here. Definitely like go ahead and let everybody know where that they can find your content and like your website and all of that stuff.
All right, so the website where you can get the lightsabers guaranteed better than a stick is levelupsabers.com. If you're watching at home, the logo and the words are all over everything. Level Up Sabers, better than a stick. For my biggest following is on TikTok, and so for all of you that are on the Clock app, I am Level Up Light and then the number 1. And then because occasionally when you are swinging a lightsaber around on TikTok, TikTok thinks you are performing a dangerous act, and then you get hushed. And so I am also Level Up Light and then the number 2. And so at some point there will be a Level Up Light and the number 3, and I hope it doesn't have to go any farther than that.
Hopefully not. Yeah.
So I love your content. I was watching a video the other day that you had put up, and you do your durability demonstrations
on there, and like
I wasn't able to hear the audio at first, and I was like, oh, that's funny. And then like I put my headphones on my 15-minute break, and I sit at my desk at my 15-minute break, and I heard you going like ah and like hitting it and everything, and I just busted out laughing, and like the two people are sitting next to me are like, what? I was like, I could explain this to you all, but you would not understand. It's okay.
Yeah, I could explain this in detail and it still wouldn't make sense why I'm laughing, but that's all right.
Yep.
And in the one where the girl like asked the question, are those what I think they are? And then like you did like the perfect answer to it and everything. So
I thought that was freaking hilarious.
For the Saber Day weekend sale, for everybody that missed this, so I had like not even all of, just most of the types of saber handles that are available just lined up on the table. And the person said, are those what I think they are, in a comment, and then a series of emojis with like raised eyebrows and some other things. And I explained that they are a lightsaber that's guaranteed better than a stick. And so like some lightsaber companies, durability really isn't something that they think about. And so like whether you're going to be thrusting or spinning or whatever, like, depending on what you need there, they're not going to hold up, and Level Up Sabers will. And I don't have one on hand to kind of show, but girth is underappreciated. And so like for Level Up Sabers, this is about the girth that we're working with on the handle. And one of the things that I found with a lot of other saber companies, which is why I work with the manufacturer I do, that like they have a lot more girth. And some people, I'm sure, like, that's what they want from a saber, and that's fine. But like for me, it was too much, especially like if I'm doing like an hour long, really, really working it with both hands or whatever. Like it was too much. I needed something that was a little bit different. And there's also like texturally, some of the other companies, like the really, really girthy ones, like the texture is not good. And so like that's a consideration. and I didn't get to like, so like that video, like there's two things I didn't even get to touch at all, because like you only get like a minute on TikTok, right, for the most part, and if you do a video that's longer than a minute, nobody's gonna watch it. And so like I got to go through all that to kind of explain about level up sabers and, you know, like I said, the durability and the girth and the you know, satisfying hand feel and that kind of thing, but I didn't get to dive into protection, which is something you really want to think about. And then like whoever you're going to be using your saber with, making sure that you talk beforehand about like what level of roughness you both expect, because, you know, if I'm expecting a certain level of impact and they're exceeding that, well then I'm not going to feel safe. And so then, you know, then again we're back to the protection discussion. You know, and if they're expecting a certain level of impact and I'm not delivering, well then they're also going to be dissatisfied. And so like, you know, consent and understanding of, you know, level of intensity is really, really important. And then from like a protection standpoint, like fingers, eyes, throat, a lot of people don't think about protecting their throat, and that's really important. Most people sort of like, oh yeah, I should protect my eyes. And that's, you know, I call it a gender thing, whatever. Like dudes usually think less about protecting their eyes than women do. But that's it. As far as I could run it. That's like, that was the riff.
I'm keeping straight face here. She's good.
I'm sorry. I'm a child. I'm gonna laugh at that stuff. But like, I was dying laughing at that one. I was like, that is the perfect way of putting all of that. That was like amazing. So I definitely recommend like looking up his TikTok. It's like just that one alone will get you hooked on the channel. So definitely check them out on there. Check out their lightsabers. I'm going to be buying a pirate one. I know you were going to talk about getting one of the more Star Warsy ones on there, but personally, I need the pirate one, because if we're going to do a Spelljammer just to like show off what the like, you know, adventure book is going to be, you got to have one. So
I mean, is it, but then viable question. Are you going to get the pirate one, or are you going to get the Sailor Moon?
So, the pirate one will be on the budget of the channel, Nerding Out. The Sailor Moon one will be the personal budget, and that will be from my own personal collection, which will probably go up here on my Sailor Moon, or probably in my bedroom, to where I can just like every once in a while just be like, I'm a magical girl, yay. So, but yeah, I definitely check them out. Like I'm definitely going to be getting the pirate one for that, just because if I have the sword, then I'm going to feel more like a pirate, and that just makes the whole experience much better. So exactly, and then everyone has more fun, and so it's just overall it's a must-have. So definitely check his stuff out. Go ahead and check out his lightsabers and everything. They're super awesome looking, and it's when you get onto the website, it's got this really cool like trailer at the very front of it where it shows like how they work and everything. So be careful though, because you will spend some money and you'll want it all. So Yes. So yeah, I got a giant corgi plushie because I was playing a bard that she had an unseen servant that would do things for her, and I was able to
Convince my
yes, I was able to convince my corgi, yeah, my DM to have it as a like I could see it as a corgi.
so like
Magical.
Yeah, and it had like every time I would like bring it up or something, it would have like a cowboy hat on or a new bandana or something like that, but only I could see it. So everybody was like, "Is she out of her mind?" And I'm like, "No, good boy." So it definitely helps you with your RP and everything like that. So if you're really looking for doing more of that and feeling a little bit more comfortable, it also helps because they see that object, so they also can kind of imagine it with you, so then everybody kind of gets a better image of what you're trying to do. So definitely, like, we are definitely going to be having you back on the show here because you have such cool ideas and everything, and just like know so much about this stuff, and it's so much fun to actually have somebody that role plays and knows like what to do and things like that, because there are some people out there, they are just there to roll dice and hit. But
I know
not everything's gotta be for everybody, and that's okay, you know?
Yes.
Like, so, for everybody that doesn't know, this is Divorce at Feedback. I'm the Gabram. And so, like, you know, like, some people, they only have fun when they're angry at things, and some people, they only have fun when they're being mean to other people, which, you know, I always sort of thought was kind of confusing. But, you know, I'm just my little tinkering Gabram self.
And like the voice is the fun part for me. Other people hate doing voices because they feel awkward. That's the fun part, is having to do that in character live, is where you've actually got the voice. Or like I've used it to practice accents before.
Yeah.
I got a character what used a modified version of the Newfoundland accent, which sounds a bit like this. And the game was just it was just an opportunity. It was an excuse to practice the accent, some of the expressions and whatnot. That's one of the things that I always enjoyed about doing, you know, various tabletop role playing games. Like I played the living shite out of Shadowrun back in the day, I tell you. Jeffrey Reginald Archibald Oglethorpe the 7th has one that has been more difficult for me to stay into consistently. Yeah, say I already lost it. Yeah, there it is. It's gone away. But but that's the fun part for me, is like sliding in and out between those things.
Yeah.
And other gamers, like, you know, they like cosplaying it, and that's what makes it feel real.
Right.
You know, I like being able to pick a song, and once I can sing the song in character, that's where it's like, I got it.
Yep.
Once I can do that, like, I'm in. I got it.
That's so cool.
yeah, I will say, like, you are actually the reason why I like to role play more in my games, because of that one that we never actually got to play. The character that you had chosen for that one, it was so cool, and like you never broke character when we were in like the game mode. So like I thought to myself, like, that is so cool, like I want to do this, I want to play like this. And so ever since then, like, I've been trying to find, the only way to put it is that high, to find the group of people who are like the same level. Yes. So like I've been slowly playing with other people and being like, all right, you're a good one, you're gonna stick in my little profile in my head. All right, you're a good one, you're gonna be in there. So like I'm trying my best to get a group of people like that together so that we can have one like that. But you are so much fun to play with, you are so much fun like to have on the show. So definitely like give him all the love and support that you can on TikTok, on your Instagram, on here. Like, let him know how much you love him, and let him know that you want him back on the show. So thank you all so much for watching. Definitely keep an eye out for future stuff here. Like I said, we've got a ton of stuff chosen or picked out, going out to nerdingouttv.com, and we do have a calendar at the very bottom to kind of show you what we are going to be doing. So keep an eye out, and thank you so much for watching. You guys have a good rest of your night.